Hillary and Bill Clinton are the world's ultimate power couple. They each can command about $250,000 per speech to speak to institutions such as Morgan Stanley, the Goldman Sachs Group, and Bank of America. On average, they give 7 paid speeches every month. That's about $100 million a year. On top of that, their foundation takes in about $250 million every year. What do companies get for these paid speeches and donations? Does it give them influence on U.S. domestic and foreign policy? Let's take a closer look. The Clintons are easily among the top 1% of wealthiest Americans. Bill Clinton has earned at least $132 million giving paid speeches since he left elected office. And Hillary has made at least $21 million speaking in the 2 years since resigning as Secretary of State. For example, on October 13, 2014, Hillary Clinton received a $225,000 fee for her keynote speech at a University of Nevada, Las Vegas Foundation fundraiser. In addition to the money, she demanded a presidential suite at a hotel of her choice and travel accommodations in a multi-million-dollar private jet for her and her staff. She also earned $675,000 for 3 speeches given to the Goldman Sachs Group. When Anderson Cooper challenged her on the propriety of a presidential candidate accepting such a sum,
but did you have to be paid $675,000?
She answered,
"Well, I don't know. That's what they offered."
But organizations don't offer that kind of speaking fee to just anybody. Jeb Bush, former Florida governor and brother and son of 2 presidents, only makes a fifth of what Hillary Clinton makes, about $50,000 per speech.
Please clap.
Beyond speaking fees, Hillary Clinton also makes a tidy sum moonlighting as a writer. Simon & Schuster reportedly gave her a $14 million advance for her memoir, Hard Choices, with an additional $5 million in royalties from the sales. And Hard Choices has sold less than 300,000 copies. That doesn't add up. So what are Simon & Schuster paying for? By comparison, blockbuster author Stephen King only got $2 million for a 3-book deal. The financial numbers from Hillary Clinton's writing career are a head-scratcher, but at least they're out in the open. The finances of the Clinton Foundation, however, are not so clear. In 2001, Bill and Hillary Clinton created the William J. Clinton Foundation, a charitable organization whose stated purpose is
to help us to promote religious and racial reconciliation, to advance citizen service, to promote economic empowerment for poor people in poor communities, and to continue the fight against AIDS.
To date, the Clinton Foundation has raised approximately $2 billion. This makes it one of the largest charitable foundations ever created. But according to Rush Limbaugh, only 15% of its funds have been paid out in grants for their area of focus. The rest of the money has been spent on administrative fees. For example, between 2009 and 2012, the Clinton Foundation raised $500 million. But of these donations, only $75 million went to program grants. What happened to the rest of it? $25 million was spent on travel. $110 million was spent on staff salaries and benefits. And $290 million was spent on other expenses. What are these other expenses? We don't have access to them. The transparency that one would expect from a foundation run by a government official simply is not there. With so little transparency, it's hard to say if anything unethical has transpired. To answer this, first we need to ask ourselves, who is donating to the Clinton Foundation? On his last day as president on January 20th of 2001, Bill Clinton issued 140 pardons and commutations of sentence, bringing the total number of pardons issued while he was in office to 450. Clinton made headlines by issuing such a large number as he walked out the door. This scandal came to be known as Pardongate. One of the highest profile pardons by Clinton was to notoriously corrupt financier Mark Rich, who was actually on the FBI's most wanted list. For his crime, Rich was facing a possible jail sentence of 325 years and penalties of $48 million for unpaid taxes. Luckily for him, his ex-wife was a generous donor. $100,000 went to Hillary's Senate campaign, $450,000 went to the Clinton Library, and the Democratic Party got a whopping $1 million. Hopefully, the Riches felt their money was well spent. Fast forward to September 6th of 2005. Bill Clinton takes a trip in the private jet of Frank Giustra, a Canadian businessman. Among other things, Giustra is heavily invested in the mining industry. Giustra was interested in a uranium mine controlled by the Kazakh government. His company was looking to secure the exclusive rights to mine Kazakhstan's deposits of uranium, which could then be sold to nuclear facilities around the world. That evening, Giustra and Clinton dined with the president of Kazakhstan, who wanted to become the head of an international organization that monitors democratic elections. Bill Clinton expressed enthusiastic support in direct contradiction of U.S. foreign policy. 2 days after their dinner, Giustra's company was granted exclusive rights to the uranium mine, making him a fortune. And he donated $31.3 million to a charitable organization known as the Clinton Foundation. 2 years later, the Russian State Nuclear Agency decided to buy a stake in the company, which would give Russia control of over 20% of the uranium in the United States. The deal was approved by Hillary Clinton's State Department.
I didn't.
The timing and circumstances surrounding this deal, as later described by Mitt Romney.
You know, I've got to tell you, I was stunned by it. I mean, it looks like bribery. I mean, there's every appearance that Hillary Clinton was bribed to grease the sale of what, 20% of America's uranium production to Russia. And then it was covered up by lying about a meeting at her home with the principals and by erasing emails.
Hillary Clinton controlled the State Department from 2009 to 2013. These are the years the Clintons really start making massive amounts of money. In this 5-year period, her husband gave over 200 paid speeches all over the world. This does not include the 5 canceled speeches planned for North Korea, China, and the Republic of Congo. Ethics officers objected to these appearances because it is eminently unreasonable and illegal for foreign governments to contribute to U.S. political campaigns. Hillary Clinton's time leading the State Department is littered with instances of lucrative deals being awarded to companies and governments who donated to the Clinton Foundation or paid Bill to give speeches. But perhaps the strongest example of the murky relationship between Clinton earnings and U.S. foreign policy was in Colombia. When appointed Secretary of State in January 2009, Hillary initially opposed an American free trade agreement with Colombia. She changed her viewpoint in June 2010, however, after she and her husband met with soon-to-be president of Colombia, Alvaro Uribe, and their close friend Frank Giustra, who is invested in several state-owned Colombian companies. What happened in this meeting is unknown. What is known is that afterwards, Hillary announced that she had seen improvements in the human rights situations in Colombia. This, despite the fact that unionist killings in Colombia had actually gone up in 2010. Were these deals improper? Was U.S. foreign policy influenced by the money that ended up in the bank accounts of Bill and Hillary Clinton? What we do know is that the parties who gave money to the Clintons benefited financially as the result of U.S. policy decisions, and the vast majority of the money donated to the Clinton Foundation is unaccounted for in any public records. As Hillary famously stated, the Clintons were dead broke when they left the White House in January 2001. Since then, they have clearly learned to leverage their influence into personal gain.